Good morning, everyone. 2020 has definitely turned out to be an eventful year so far. And I'm not just talking about the worldwide coronavirus pandemic that we are in, which I will come back to in a minute, but I am talking about the historical event that all of us just witnessed last Saturday, where a private company, SpaceX, successfully launched two NASA astronauts into orbit for the very first time in space history. What an incredible achievement! Coming back to Earth, things haven't been necessarily that interesting. We are getting used to the new norm of wearing face masks and maintaining safe distance of at least 6 feet every time we step outside. With the country starting to reopen and stay-at-home orders relaxing, companies are looking into plans to reintroduce employees to the office. We are hearing a lot of new concepts floating around explaining what that clean, contact-free work environment will look like. And believe me, some of these concepts feel like they have taken just from a sci-fi movie. Mudrooms with smart cameras and sandboxes taking over the conventional welcome spaces, officle, a hybrid space between office and cubicle, elevators with dividers, and now your phone becoming your personal digital key that can give you access to multiple spaces, such as conference rooms, elevators. In the current pandemic, health and safety have become primary business concerns and are changing the way we clean, disinfect, and sanitize the workplace. In demanding more transparency, going forward, comfort will be a perceived safety. Today, I'm very excited to be with a great diverse panel of material experts, designers, and building managers. And we are excited to talk about new surface solutions and how they will be adapting in near and far future. I can't wait to get started. How might the fabrics and other surfaces in workplaces need to change for the new normal? Jill, do you want to start?
I would be happy to. I think first, education will be important before materials. I think that's part of the puzzle. But I think healthcare kind of has a step up on terms of versus commercial material designer aspect, because they're already looking at what cleaners and disinfectants are being used in those facilities. And I don't always think that's top of mind in a commercial setting. And we're seeing that definitely at the top of mind now. So from customers who I never heard from before in terms of what's the specification for a material, before it was how did it look, maybe what the double rubs were, which was never my concern. Now it's more how does that particular product actually perform. So I'm kind of excited that we're seeing that evolution, because I think we'll start selecting materials that are actually appropriate for the space, not just looking good. But I think that piece of the puzzle is going to push material designers and material manufacturers to rethink how can something look aesthetically pleasing as well as perform. And I think we're starting to see that, but I really think this pandemic is going to push that further. And I have that within our facility. So as a manufacturer, I'm looking at what's going to perform for our customers, but my marketing team is always looking at the wow, right? That's what you put into your showrooms. And so we have that back and forth internally. And I think we're going to see that more externally with designers, because they're going to still want that great looking mohair, but how are you going to make a mohair disinfectable in the future, right? That's going to be top of mind. So I think the types of material looks are still going to be wanted, and how are manufacturers of these materials going to respond to make those materials look amazing but perform the way we now expect them to.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, performance is going to be equally critical moving forward. Colleen, do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. Continuing on with that thought about trying to create beautiful spaces consistently, healthcare has always been up against that challenge, particularly in the last 10 years, where, your entry moments have really become a very hospitality-driven aesthetic, but we still needed to continue to maintain all of that durability and cleanability, with the understanding that a healthcare environment turns over every 20 years,
Mhm.
25 years. You know, that longevity is another thing. The durability and that longevity is something that we focus on significantly as well, that I think some of the other practices, you know, their turnover is a little faster, both for corporate and hospitality and things like that. We've started, actually the healthcare practice at HOK has started doing presentations to our corporate team about some of the things we take into consideration when we start thinking about those high touch areas, you know, such as, you know, furniture being one of the big ones within a hospital. You know, we don't utilize a lot of wood furniture. We utilize a lot of solid surfacing arm caps. And then when it comes to upholsteries, you know, the cleanability is of course, you know, the bleach cleanability. You know, hospitals are really, you know, when the majority of their cleaning is some sort of bleach level solution. And some of the things we're starting to think about is the reality that, you know, moving forward, not only are the cleaning protocols going to start to become even more rigorous, so these materials are going to be wiped down more frequently than they were in the past, but that everyone's going to be coming with their own cleaning products. People are going to be coming with wipes, you know, they're Clorox wipes. And these furniture and these high touch areas are going to start to be wiped down even more frequently with harsher chemicals than, you know, what I think current manufacturers are really prepared for in that regard. I mean, even your high-end vinyls, you know, your real durables, they're still going to start to degrade faster. And starting to think about how we start to handle that level of turnover and that level of cleaning within now all of these environments, because it's going to extend well past healthcare, and it is going to start to, you know, hit the corporate world as well in terms of this level of attention to what am I touching, and what am I exposing myself to. I think is gonna be something that we're going to be challenged with, at least, you know, right off the bat, for the, you know, until, you know, we'll see how close we get back to going back to normal, or, you know, is this really going to be a significant cultural shift that's going to stay with us, you know, moving forward.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was curious, are you seeing any sort of differences in the response in different parts of the world?
You know, what we've been focused on at the moment and what our clients have been contacting us for is really immediate measures. Immediate, temporary, you know, and of course, because I focus on healthcare, we're doing a lot of temporary, whether it's testing sites or things like that. And we are seeing that internationally. But in terms of, I don't think anyone has really gotten to a point yet where they're thinking, okay, how do we move? Right now, we're still in the focus of how are we going to solve this problem momentarily. A lot of our new client contacts and, you know, reach outs have been about, okay, I need to solve this problem right now. And I don't know that we've had really any true sit downs with clients to really understand, okay, everything has settled. Now, what are we going to do to sort of prepare, you know, and make sure that we're, when, because everyone is saying that this is going to be a thing that we'll probably be contending with on and off. You know, when this happens again, how are we going to be prepared for it? And, you know, a lot of what we're looking at is much larger building infrastructure type of stuff, truthfully.
Right. So we move the spotlight on infection control. What are the immediate office solutions that will get people back in the office safely? Sally, do you have any comments?
Although I do fit out office spaces, I'm actually with Colleen a little bit more centered around healthcare, less hospital or general healthcare. So I haven't come up across anything to do directly with coronavirus other than the issues around perhaps the logistics of delivering in furniture and what are things going to be upholstered in. But that's an issue that we've not had about this coronavirus as such, but other sort of clinical issues in the past. So our fabrics and things that we've chosen have always had to be used appropriately, and keeping the spotlight on things looking nice, because I'm talking about not necessarily hospitals, but elderly care homes, long-term residential care for adults and children and that sort of thing. So I have to admit, I'm perhaps a little bit behind on that, because I think we're just getting to a point where everyone's been in lockdown, everyone's been sort of going, and now things are getting to a point where it's like, okay, now we're just going to move forward and live with this. So how are we going to do it? And I think in terms of office environments, it will be very similar. You know, we haven't thought about before what are office chairs upholstered in, what are tabletops made of. Obviously the social distancing side of it and that sort of thing is a layout thing, but in terms of surface materials, in office spaces this was never even really considered, apart from being hard wearing, whereas in healthcare obviously it's always been considered. You know, we've always had to consider using waterproof fabrics, inherently fire retardant fabrics, all these sorts of things, whereas the office environment hasn't really bothered about that up till now, but I think they're very much going to bother about it, to the point where, I don't know about you, but when I look back on video footage on the news or whatever, and you see massive groups of people together in the past, only like 6 months ago, it feels weird to have so many people in a small space in any one point. And I think even now, going into an environment that's not known to you, and you sitting in a chair and you put your hands on the chair, everyone's going to be thinking, what am I touching? Who sat here before? What's held in this chair that I don't know about? And so our mindset, I think, is going to be changing, or has already changed massively. And I don't think we're ever going to be the same again, and just be able to be comfortable in another environment that isn't our own and feel incredibly safe, unless everything becomes routine, it's standard procedure to do certain actions, or people are displaying exactly what they've bought, what its features are, product features are, and so therefore we can go into another environment, like an office environment, feel comfortable about where we're sitting and knowing that we're safe.
I must say, even at home, now I've started noticing whenever I sit on a chair, like how many surfaces I'm touching every day. And I feel like, wow, how that's going to change when I go back to office. So I completely see where you're coming from. What are the surface innovations that are being developed now for healthcare and other environments? Benji?
You did, Dr. Keskar. Disinfecting any surface is very important, but especially now in healthcare, it's going to become extremely important. So, things like UVC lights, fogging, electrostatic sprayers, they're all being tested now in these environments, and we're going to see which ones become most cost efficient and most effective. Also, non-porous surfaces and materials with high chemical resistance are short-term trends that may become long-term trends depending on how long it takes for us to come up with an effective vaccine. To me, the move away from woven textiles and the move toward solid surfaces has already begun and will continue for the foreseeable future. From an innovative standpoint, we'll look for these type of solid surfaces to provide the same haptics, to provide the same appearance as textiles, but also perform differently than what we've seen in traditional woven textiles. Things like Ultrafabrics materials that are non-porous, that have that chemical resistance, but also have that super soft hand will be things that people will turn toward in the future.
Jill, is there anything you would like to add?
Not in particular to that. I wouldn't mind tacking on more to what Sally was asked, though, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Just being more that we are focused more on the return to work. I mean, we provide furniture for that. We are definitely, that's our top of mind right now, because we're talking about how we ourselves are going to return to the office. We're all working from home. And so we've been doing that research, and we're really focusing on 3 things where Colleen was referring to right now. What's the way to to tackle the really urgent matters, right? How do we support those things? So those are definitely big fits. Like, how do we retrofit what already exists? Because with companies shut down, budgets are low or minuscule. So how can you take what's already existing in your environment and retrofit it? So obviously privacy screens, we hear about that everywhere, you know, different sizes, different materials. Are they transparent? Are they opaque? You know, those types of things. How do you clean them? But taking it a step further, and how do you retrofit furniture even more? So we do a lot of modular lounge. And so think of these big open lobbies and waiting rooms. And, you know, I was just in the orthodontist office yesterday, and they have a big pile of furniture in the corner, and they have the rest, you know, spaced out. So you can't sit on those, and that's how you're social distancing, right? But how could you take what's a big modular piece that's, you know, could be 20 together? How could you make that work? So, and how do you keep it there without throwing it in a corner and throwing trash bags over it so people don't use it? So we've created panels. They could be the same upholstery that you already have on there. It could be a laminate panel. So you're looking at, you know, a more durable surface, but maybe a lower cost point. And we're making those panels so you can take your lounge apart, because it's modular. It's pretty easy to do. And you can insert these panels in between. And you can do them at various heights. So you can make your customers feel comfortable. Businesses aren't gonna work if the customers don't feel comfortable being there. So it's not just the customers, it's the employees and customers feeling comfortable in that space again. So I think that could be short term, that could be future. And I think that also gives us insight to what future products could be. You know, I fear that some won't take it as seriously, you know, in the return, and won't be as concerned about that, but we need to have product that will support those who are taking this seriously. And we can use those materials and adapting furniture. And then I think it will lead us to new furniture styles to support those. But then also looking bigger picture, for how do we return to the office? So with all the research we've done, we've created checklists, you know, how do you get back into the office easily? Think about how you could route people through your space. You know, maybe if you're going to the restroom, you take this hallway. When you come back from the restroom, you go this hallway. So you're flowing the same way. And I think those are things that you can take from healthcare. You know, think of nurses going through and there's a circular motion. Those are some actions that we can replicate in the rest of the world and make it a safer place. And so we're sharing that information. Everybody's at home, so we're putting all that information on our website so it's easy to reference. And then we're using it ourselves. We're working on our return to work. So we had a pre-phase. We did find some people just can't do their job at home, whether it's a technology issue or if it's their home environment. You know, everybody's also got their kids at home, so sometimes it's easier than others to be working. I'm experiencing that, which is why I came to the office today to record this, so you don't have my kids running around in the back room. But we have this pre-phase, so we are allowed to do that, but there's maybe 5 of us here in a 600-person building. But we have a new phase starting next week. And so around 100 people are going to be coming back into the office, and they're kind of, you know, testing the waters for us. But really that coming back isn't really modifications to product, it's density. It's we're able to keep our distance because we have fewer people here. And then our next phases are going to be, what do we have to modify to bring us back? Because so much was open plan, right? I mean, in my area, I had 6 people that I could probably reach out and touch, and that's not our future. So how do we adapt that? And we are the ones designing it, and we'll be able to take that lead and make those changes. And then I also think about, will the density still be the same in the future? You know, we are able to work from home, and a lot of us have been able to do it well. There's times where you do have to be, it isn't beneficial to be together and collaborate and bounce those ideas off of one another. And I think that will still be relevant. But, you know, a lot of our team, maybe the finance team or IT team who can really do a lot of this work remotely, I think a lot of those people will remain home, which will change the needs of the facility. So I foresee fewer focus areas. So how do you make these collaboration team, we spaces and us spaces feel safe again?
Hmm. There were some really excellent points in there. I mean, I definitely think like the modular approach or having like one-way workflows is going to be new normal.
Yes.
And the collaborative spaces, I guess, so that's a very interesting and is going to be somewhat challenging problem to tackle. But before we discuss further about it, I wanted to come back to your point about like how we had the luxury of exercising social distancing on demand in our own way when we were working at our offices. But now with these new mandates, how we are going to adjust those floor plans and going to sort of incorporate safer seating layouts. And I wanted to see like what the leasing industry thinks is going to happen to office spaces. John, would you like to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, the collaborative spaces, we're going to definitely see those go away for sure. We are going to see, unfortunately, coffee makers in the office are going to be taken away. The water tank is gone. Like there's no hanging out at the water. So it is scary. It's, you know, people are getting into elevators, and if there's somebody in there, somebody's like getting out. Like I don't want to get into an elevator with somebody. So it's that bad. And we've seen in buildings where it's, you know, 4 X's in the corners. I've seen signs on elevators that saying only 2 people in elevators. Mm-hmm. Certainly, owners are now installing hand sanitizers at every elevator lobby bank. So it's just that little thing of just getting into your office space. And so now that you are in your office space, yes, it will be social distancing. You're going to have to be 6 feet away. Those common areas, who knows I mean, that was such a big thing last year, and now here we are, and it's all changing every day so quickly. If you have any tchotchke or anything on your desks, mm-hmm. you can't do that anymore. So they have to be able to clean the surfaces. So all my bobbleheads, I got to bring them home. So, you know, we're just seeing kind of those little things at this point. Unfortunately, we're here in week 12 of this, and it's been just a total pause button, and nobody really knows what direction this is going. Mm-hmm. And everybody would love to go back to normalcy and get back into the office place. But, you know, again, it's who can stay at home and who do we need to bring back? Do you want to come back? And so we haven't seen that play out, and it will be very interesting to see what does happen. I would say each state is different. Phoenix is back. Portland is coming back. LA is very much no, stay home. Mm-hmm. And let's do the phasing in that we've all been talking about. We're seeing companies like you have to sign a waiver to get back into your office. So there's a lot of interesting things happening. I personally, you know, I've been home with 2 kids and a dog, and my wife's working from home, and it's crazy, and I need to get back to my office. And I'd love to be able to do that, but my company mandated, you know, if you're going to come into the office, you need to check in. Yeah. And so they want to know who's going to be in the office. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of interesting things that we're seeing right now, and it's just the tip of the iceberg for moving back into the office, but that's my 2 cents on that.
Very well said. Especially common areas are definitely going to be repurposed and will need to be reimagined to create multifunctional, multi-purpose spaces that are more focused on agile and activity-based work environments. Can future-forward materials and design save these collaborative spaces? Colleen?
It's out of our hands in terms of designers. There's going to be a total reevaluation of your MEP systems. Mm-hmm. And how are you cleaning the air? you know, those are the types of the big building infrastructure type of things are going to be the most impactful when you start thinking about enclosed spaces and the number of people within those enclosed spaces. And then cleaning, of course, being a secondary. But when you start thinking about your collaborative, and I work in an industry where collaboration it's critical. I can't even begin to imagine, and it's been difficult. You know, we're doing our jobs from home, and we're doing it. It's a little more laborious. It's a little more time consuming, but we've been doing it. But you know, my soul wants to be standing around a floor plan with Trace and drawing with my team and talking and really working that out. And we're doing it remotely, but that energy is missing. So I definitely come from an industry where I do worry about those collaborative spaces personally, you know, significantly. And I think that, you know, there are, you know, mine being one of them, industries that I don't know that we're ever going to be able to get away from that. You know, we've had conversations about, you know, desk crits. You know, you come up to someone's desk, you sit down and you talk about what's on the screen. And at the moment they're saying not going to be allowed to do that. And I keep thinking, well, then why am I going back to the office? Like that's the benefit of being there. The other benefit of my office is to touch the stuff, because I'm an interior designer. I need to touch the stuff, and then I need to hand it to someone and say, you touch it. You know, how does this material feel? How do these two materials look together? That's my job. And so when it comes to these collaborative spaces, I'm praying that they're salvageable. I think there's so many industries where they're going to have to be. You know, but again, I think what we're going to be really looking at then at that point is going to be cleaning, and it's going to be HVAC. Honestly, it's going to be how are we filtering the air and how quickly are we filtering the air, and things like that.
Let me just tag on to that real quick. The air filtration systems upgrades are going to be huge, and every owner right now is really looking into that. And then the other thing on safety is security guards are now going to be taking people's temperatures, you know, using thermal energy, or, you know, like that's going to be a new norm. You're going to have to take your temperature before you get into the building. And so, but the air filtration systems, that's huge for sure.
Yeah, I think gone are the days when people would turn up to work with stinking cold because they were, you know, they were seeing it through, because they didn't want to be taking a sick day where unnecessarily, you know, you only got to sneeze because of the pollen and people run for cover, you know. I think also that the sort of open plan working environment has sort of come about in the last, I don't know, however many years. And previous to that, there were a lot of boxed off offices where you'd have various managers in various offices, and then you'd have a secretary outside of that office, and it was very much sort of compartmentalized, an office space, and we moved away from that. I mean, I can remember people saying to me, I want a Google type office with it all open plan and funky, and, you know, lots of collaborative space and lots of, you know, play space, if you like, and that was probably fun for a while and everyone made the most of it, but I just don't think that can ever be. I think we're going to have to return back to little boxed off offices, even if it's just with you know, panels like we see at the supermarkets now.
Back
you know,
to the farms that they used to call.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were already seeing it start to go back that way. I mean, there was already the concerns of being able to focus in those spaces. You know, it was trying to find that fine line on, you know, where it's your productivity, but still getting your work done and still getting those ideas like Colleen was talking about, when you just stopped at somebody's office because you're like, oh, I have this idea, and you need to get it out, and they're there. You know, there's still those times. I mean, that is what I probably miss the most about being at home is, oh, I need to talk to you about this right now, and touching things like that. I totally agree with that. But I think we already saw some of that coming. I think this is going to make it happen immediately.
Yeah, we've joked at the office that we became you know, our corporate team, you know, we became extremely efficient and very good at cramming as many people onto a floor plate as possible. You know, and making it as beautiful as possible. And all of that, I completely agree, I think permanently is going to be rethought. And the other, I think, big shift that's going to occur, particularly for workplace, is a lot of businesses, and mine being one of them, didn't believe that our jobs could be done remotely. You know, and I know that our senior executives are now saying we were wrong. We can actually do our job effectively remotely. And I think there's going to be an enormous shift in thinking about how much am I going to pay for lease space if I don't actually have to have everyone in the office.
I mean, I would definitely think this is going to be a challenge that everyone need to work together on, especially for interactive spaces like our material library. Think about it. Everyone comes to the library to interact and to touch and feel the materials. So it's definitely
shoulder to shoulder.
Yes.
So it's definitely going to be a new experience, and we have to work out the ways to still make our clients feel safe when they are there in that environment and give them the same kind of, you know, interactivity and tactility. But certainly things are going to be quite different than they were like 3 months ago. Benji, I was wondering, like, what are the kind of attributes we would be looking into these multi-purpose materials that can help us convert these, you know, common spaces or collaborative spaces into multifunctional spaces?
In terms of the healthcare environment, materials in that environment that are used for upholstery and seating, vertical surfaces such as movable panels, acoustical panels, privacy curtains, they all are going to need disinfected a lot more frequently than we've ever done it before. And so how do we choose materials that can withstand those type of harsh disinfectants, yet still kind of give us a soothing feel when we're in that space? You know, give us that warm feel, that sense of protection and that sense of care that we need when we're in those spaces. So to me, these materials are going to have to be innovated. There's some materials that are available that have, you know, non-porous surfaces that are stable to these type of disinfectants that are out there, but a lot more are going to become available. And I think the companies that really dig into that side of it and can do it in a way that is not creating other harmful environments. If you can do it in a kind of a biomimicry way, you know, meaning we can copy nature and we're not adding harmful chemicals to provide an antimicrobial approach or an antiviral approach, can we do it mechanically? Can we do it in other ways where we're providing a safe environment, a easily disinfected environment? And when we say disinfectant, I think we all think chemically disinfectant, but there's a lot of new technologies out there like UVC, where you can go into a room and you can expose the entire room or an entire airplane to UVC rays, and you can disinfect the entire room or disinfect the entire airplane in a matter of minutes. And so how do materials hold up to this? We've never even tested materials to UVC before. And now we've got to look at this new type of testing. And so the innovation of materials is going to be key going forward, to try to still keep those haptics and try to still keep that appeal from the design side, but meet some new performance criteria that's never been in place.
I feel there is another concern that as we are investing in health and safety of our people, is it coming at the cost of the health of the planet? So how the push towards hygiene intervene with the interests of sustainability? Anyone wants to take a grab of it?
I certainly thought along those lines, in that we're so wrapped up, aren't we, at the moment in terms of face masks and rubber gloves, that we've put on hold any thoughts we have about trying to reduce plastics. And of course, this is going to change everything if we're talking about hard surfaces and making everything perhaps moldable so that there are no little crevices that need cleaning and all that sort of thing. And so plastics now come back into the fore again, whereas we were all anti it and trying to find other ways. I have wondered myself, one, about the disposing of all these products. So when we're talking about, the cleaning of offices, even down to the anti-bac wipes that we're using, or the spray disinfectants that we're using, all of these sorts of things are very counter what we have been moving towards as a world. And we seem to have all forgotten about that suddenly, haven't we? Because we're so wrapped up in this crisis. But it has to come back in. I mean, there's lots of stuff on Facebook about dolphins arriving back in Venice because, there's no boats, and, all these beautiful changes to the world because, humans have laid quiet for a while. But on the other side of it, we're all using these products which are not going to help our environment, and are all these things that the wipe's going to end up in the sea, and all the plastic chairs going to end up, in landfill. So I think it's going to have a massive long-term effect, but no one's really thinking about that right now because we're just so deep in the crisis of it.
Is there anything anyone else would like to add to that?
Well, I think Benji made a really good point in that when you start thinking about materiality and antimicrobial and for healthcare with hospital-acquired infections, this has been a big topic that we've always gone back and forth with, and there certainly are a lot of materials, and as an industry, we're fairly skeptical about the majority of them. Some of them are effective, but copper takes 4 hours. It has to have direct contact. So there are opportunities for sure. But the key is going to be, as we start thinking about this, is to do no harm. That we don't want to be exposing, any both, during the initial processing to, any exposure as it degrades, to anyone who comes into contact with anything. We don't want to be using chemicals for that purpose. So when we start, and I think that is going to start to become a very big focus from a lot of the material manufacturers, is how quickly can we turn around these antimicrobial products and get them on the market. But there needs to be some efficacy to that. There needs to be some moral standing about, to Sally's point, we can't lose sight of the direction we were going, simply to solve this particular problem. And I think Sally made a great point about, we are in a heavy duty disposable moment. We don't want to be keeping anything that touched that. We want to make sure we can throw that away and not bring it in our house and things like that. And I think that's also a very interesting perspective.
Agree. I would just add on to the antimicrobial statements. I mean, obviously you referred to, Colleen, about the skepticism of, what really are they doing? I kind of feel it gives a false sense of protection when really cleaning and disinfecting is really what needs to be done, and that's more important. What can a material withstand? And I mean, before this happened, we were seeing the removal of antimicrobials from a lot of materials. In response to that, we have HHI, who was like, you can't have these added antimicrobials to get the certification. Kaiser Permanente can't have that in their buildings, right? And so right now I'm getting that request for those materials, and I'm like, it's an education thing right now. And there's no proof that these antimicrobials are going to take care of the virus. There is no proof of that. And I think it's an education thing. It's not just providing the products, but it's also educating these people who feel more has to be better when more could be worse.
And I agree. I think cleaning protocols tend to lax when there's this it's sort of what the trap that Krypton had fallen into, several years ago, where it was like, oh, we're going to upholster your chair in Krypton, and then people stopped wiping it down when coffee spilled on it.
It was
then
like it
they
was
got
self-cleaning or something.
they just were like, oh, well, it's impervious.
Yes.
And that wasn't the case. You know,
Absolutely.
it gave you some time.
Exactly.
And yeah, so that was an issue for sure.
Sure. So when we're talking about durability of products and talking about repeated clean and how we may disinfect materials multiple times a day, and so that adds up to thousands and thousands of times a year potentially, for these non-porous surfaces and for these goods that will be leather-like. One of the most important tests that we can do, one of the most things we can look at is the hydrolysis. How long will that surface stand up to moisture? How long will that surface stand up to a heat environment? And for us, using premium products, using premium resins is utmost important to be able to meet those requirements and to provide that durability. So as we start to look at these harsh cleanings that will start to take place in the hospital environments, how do we pick materials that have that high hydrolysis and can provide that durability that we're used to, and still have the haptics and still have the appeal from a design standpoint? The antimicrobial treatments that people are using and materials give you a layer of protection, but is not a substitute for disinfecting and sanitizing surfaces. Yep. And people should not be laxed about doing that and thinking that that material that is protecting itself is going to protect you, because it's not there to protect you. It's there to protect itself.
Yeah, and people don't think that way.
Yeah. When I think about hospitals, the turnover of the cleaning staff. So even when you open a new facility and you bring it in and you educate everybody, the turnover and that continuing on of the education. And I'm sure that's an issue within corporate environments, in all environments. That knowledge does eventually sort of get lost, and things just are not maintained in the appropriate way.
Absolutely.
Certainly, I think education is going to play a very key role moving forward, because as all of you mentioned, that nothing is perfect in terms of no one approach is going to help us solve all the challenges. So we have to work together or incorporate these approaches in parallel in order to make sure that we get the best level of safety. But I also wanted to talk about, in terms of these being an amazing opportunity to just look beyond physical hygiene and safety. I mean, obviously that's really very important given the current circumstances. But I was thinking about having a space now that we have an opportunity to redesign it or rethink it. Can we also bring into the material hygiene? We briefly talked about sustainability being a part of it, and also the overall well-being of our employees and planet. It doesn't necessarily have to be just physical hygiene or physical well-being, because everyone with the given pandemic is also very exhausted emotionally and mentally, and it's always going to be sort of anxious going back to workplace, because they don't know whether they are bringing back viruses or other bacteria. Is that going to cause more problems for other family members? So how we can create these places that will help them calm down and will provide that peace of mind, not just from the safety point of view, but also overall well-being, to have a little more balanced life. Any thoughts on that?
I think of I'm talking education, we do a lot of CEUs for our customers, and we do one that talks about color and about how things feel. Right? I think that's a big part of an environment, especially from a interior designer perspective, right? I mean, we have these hard surfaces that we think about cleaning, but gosh, if you have a whole space like that, it may feel sterile and clean, but I'm sure I don't feel comfortable there. It's not a place I want to hang out. So I think that is definitely some technology expectations, goals, right? How can we have these materials that feel comforting, that can withstand, and you don't look at it and go, ooh, did they clean that? I mean, I think that that's a part of like our space. Like before, we used to hide all of our cleaning stuff, but like it happened after hours. I think people may feel more comfortable, like at the end of the day, starting to see the cleaning crew come in. Like, you know, maybe you see them more. I mean, I know a part of our protocol is talking about how much more things are going to be cleaned. Sorry, I'm coming back to cleaning, and I know we're talking about other things, but how can we get materials that feel comfortable? You know, how can we bring that leather chair back and it can withstand it? I think it's going to be finding those softer materials, and colors too. I mean, how color and texture come into play, but texture poses its own issues too. You know, do you get those viruses and microbes and things stuck in there? So that's another challenge too. I mean, I think of woven material or coated fabrics, you know, I think that technology has come a long way recently. So you get the look and feel of a fabric, but it's a non-woven. And I think that's just the starting point, but maybe you'll start to see that feel on other surfaces. Maybe it's a hard surface and it's a surprise, it's camouflaged. It really, you know, it really is a hard surface, but it's gonna look softer. I think that could be something we'll see.
We've come across quite a lot of that in the past when we're trying to fit out challenging behaviour units.
Oh yeah.
And it's exactly the same thing, where it's a real thin line between safety and somewhere looking institutional. And taking away or creating a very prison-like environment for someone who's not in prison. They just need to be kept safe. And I've spent an awful lot of time over the years looking for vinyl fabrics, for instance, that are, again, exactly, you're talking about colour, you are talking about texture, because there are quite a few vinyls these days that are the way they're manufactured, that they actually look like fabric. Absolutely. And you actually go up and touch them and go, oh no, actually that is a vinyl. In fact, I've even had sofas and things be returned because they said, no, we wanted it in a vinyl and it's the fabric. And it's like, no, that if you touch it, feel it, you find it is actually a vinyl. And I think that's always been really important, to try and soften these areas, which, if you think too clinically about it, and it's got to be white clean, it's got to be clinically sound, then you do lose the edge of comfortability and it to look particularly homely, because in some of these challenging behaviour units, you know, these are homes for life for people that, you know, they're not going anywhere. This is home. It's got to feel like home. For their families, it's got to feel like home. They want their loved ones to be in an environment that feels comfortable and softens the mind, and they're not banging around the place. You know, again, that's another thing. You know, you've got lots of hard surfaces and people that can do themselves a lot of damage on that. So there are products out there already that are coping with these issues, but we never use them for just standard environments because we haven't had to. But I think there'll be more emphasis on trying to find things that, you know, they look one thing, but they're definitely another thing. You know, never has fake been so good up till now. You know, is that we've up till now we've wanted the real leather sofa that's going to be, you know, from this type of, and it's this old and all that sort of thing. Actually, we want something that looks the part, but actually isn't. And I think fabric companies will now be spending a lot of time trying to innovate products that look like something that they're not. And yet, you know, they reassure everyone that's using them that they are safe.
And just to add a little bit to what Jill and both Sally said, certainly I'm an engineer, not a designer, so I may be stepping a little bit out of my realm here, but people, when you think about bleach cleanability, you think white, you think, you know, that color makes me feel like that surface is clean. So in traditional high occupancy spaces, we've seen a lot of design and a lot of color used to try to hide dirt and stains and things like that. But I feel like it may flow back the other direction, because you may see lighter, wider surfaces to give the consumer the impression and the comfort of it's been cleaned. It is clean. I can see visibly it's white, it's clean. And oh, it's been bleached, it's white. So you have that feeling of comfort, and maybe that would be a trend, at least for the short term, until that comfort factor does come back when you go to these high occupancy buildings.
I would like to say, whether the company decides to put in place an army of hand sanitizers or frequent cleaning and disinfecting policies, or start using antimicrobials, none of these solutions are going to really matter in reducing the risk of spreading infection unless we, the people, get into habit of frequently and regularly washing our hands. So as we touched upon before, the behavioral change is equally important in order to maintain the safety and health of employees at workplaces as well as at homes. And finally, I would like to conclude by saying, as we see here, that a collective effort is necessary in order to design offices that not only feel clinical and sterile, but are also inspiring, functional, and embody the warm, vibrant, and colorful personalities of people working there to boost their creativity, material appetite, and integrative health for a stronger, better, and sustainable tomorrow. A big thank you to all our panelists for their time and valuable insights. See you next time.